Good morning, Mr. Patil. Good morning. Sorry, I am a bit late today. But yeah, I'm started. I'm live on LinkedIn. Just gonna be live on LinkedIn in a second, and then I'll have to send a message about these two platforms on WhatsApp to my folks, and then we'll be ready to go, and we'll have the show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. We deserve it. It's that good. 36th episode. How time flies. 36 episodes have happened already. Perfect. Live on YouTube, live on LinkedIn. Message to WhatsApp sent. And that's it. Come on in. Come on in. I hope you can hear me properly on YouTube, Mr. Patil. Sorry to keep you waiting. I hope I'm audible. Give me an audio check, please. And then we'll be able to begin, right? Yeah. Yes, perfect. So I'm audible on YouTube and I am audible on LinkedIn, I guess. I'm just waiting for somebody to confirm my LinkedIn audio. And then, yeah, people have started joining in. It's 8:08. We are late. We gotta begin quickly. Have a heavy day at work ahead. So, I guess if you can hear me on LinkedIn, people, just confirm or I'll just check myself 1 second. My LinkedIn audio. Oh, my LinkedIn is great. Oh, I even got a thumbs up. That's great. So I got a thumbs up on LinkedIn audio. I can't see who did that, but yeah. Just put my laptop on charge so that it doesn't give up midway. Perfect. If you can hear me on LinkedIn, let's go. Yeah, I got a comment. Yes. Okay, perfect. Completed 5 weeks. Congrats on the consistency. Amen. 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 I'll talk about it a bit more. I'll just tell you what the very good story. Mr. Deepak says yes, we can hear you. Perfect. So we'll begin. Bum 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 bum. Hello everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, you got to follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition? The sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. And all you need for the simultaneous sip, which we're going to have together, Is a cup, a mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind? Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having coffee, cold. And here we go. Oh my god. Oh my god. Let's do it again. Beautiful. Beautiful. Sublime. Absolutely sublime. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what the simultaneous sip says, don't you? It says that you're not alone. It says that we're in this together. And that's such a nice thing to say. Good morning, Mr. Shamir. So let's begin. So, taxmen, Indian revenue services, Indian tax people, they've come out with an ITAT ruling order, which is treating agri assets as immovable asset, agri land as immovable asset. So they're looking at tax liability in purchases made below market level. So what people used to do was, let's say there's a farmland worth 10 crores. So what they used to be doing was they used to buy it for 2 crores white value, I mean the registered value of 2 crores, and then 8 crores in cash. And since the farmers don't have to pay any taxes, they are exempted from a lot of taxes. It used to be a good deal because they used to get cash, which they could otherwise use in different places, and also the 2 crore white money came to them, right? So, and then what the person used to do was that he used to sell this particular land in a couple of years to at a value of, let's say, 12 crores, but all of that used to be white. So that 8 crore black element used to be converted to white money, right, using this. So what these people are talking about is now that we're going to tax the real estate, agri real estate, which is transacted below market value, and we are going to treat it as an immovable asset, because we see that a lot of babus and politicians and actors and so on, they use a lot of money trail covering by using real estate as a means. So that is that is a good move, obviously, from the tribunal. ITAT is Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. However, I think that it's not gonna be airtight, right? So right now there's no capital gains on the farmland. Buying land happens. So they are basically coming up with treating it as an immovable asset would essentially lead to capital gains and so on and so forth. So just imagine you had 2 crores of white transaction, and then you sold that land for, let's say, 10 crore or 12 crore on white transaction, and there is no tax to pay on that, right? So that's something that these people are thinking, but is a huge arc from when these recommendations are made and when these are actually followed and how they are followed. It's not a small deal. So let's just follow this developing news, right, as we're talking about it. uh, the Senate is inching forward on the tax cut and spending bill. The US Senate is going out with the big beautiful bill, which Team Trump is very, very bullish on. And the big beautiful bill has rescinded its tax benefit to the EV ecosystem. So the EV play used to have like 7,500 crore, $7,500 consumer tax credit for EV. So people used to have a 7.5K dollar input tax as far as EV purchases were considered. Now that goes, and Mr. Musk says this is going to be very detrimental for the industry. Handouts to industries of the past while severely damaging industries of the future. This is slightly inconsistent because Mr. Musk has been talking about the need for the EV industry to stand on its own. he has always maintained that, uh, we should be thinking about moving without incentives. But now that these investor incentives are being taken away from the EV in US, he's not very happy about it, and that's fair, right? Because that's fair. Anyway, what's not gonna be fair is Mr. Trump's outlook for the entire American economy. So, a lot of good news has been happening as far as American economy is considered, right? Or America is considered in general. The Israel-Iran conflict is coming to an end, has come to an end. The Israel-Gaza conflict is also coming to an end. US inflation is low. The job data is okay. The trade deals are getting signed. The markets, the Wall Street markets, are back to their peaks, and they're actually erased all the losses that they made due to the inconsistent tariff back and forth. Everything is looking a little great, right, for America right now. However, none of this would matter. None of this would matter at all, because right now US debt is at 36 trillion, and this particular bill will raise it to 39 trillion or 40 trillion within the next 10 years. And the interest of that debt will essentially is already greater than the defense budget of United States, right? So that interest will be extraordinary. And at the event of a default, if anything defaults, if anything happens, as far as US debt is considered, it's gonna be hellfire. And that was the bone of contention between Mr. Musk and Mr. Trump. That how do you make sure that the deficit spiral doesn't go out of control? Because that's what Doge was for, right? Department of Government Efficiency. That you reduce spending, you you manage the spending in such a way that this particular bill goes down, the interest bill goes down. But that doesn't seem to be having any respite at the moment. Team Trump's uh, perspective is a bit different. They say that this is the bill that can get passed, and then we'll move forward with other things. And this bill will also provide some sort of growth opportunities for the economy, which will help in servicing the debt. But the whole conversation around this particular bill is so complicated that it's very hard to follow. It's very hard to, nobody even knows what's going in the bill. And now there's going to be Senate hearing, then this House, Senate, and then parliamentary is going to talk about it, and so on and so forth. So let's see how this particular thing shapes up. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump has been saying that TikTok has a buyer. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that TikTok, US has been looking at TikTok's acquisition by an American company, because TikTok operating as a Chinese unit has been linked to espionage, has been linked to security concerns, has been linked to a lot of bad news, because US has said that TikTok is being used to program US brains in a bad way, and it's also being used to collect data, user data, which is a security threat, right? So US currently is facing two threats from China. One is the fentanyl risk. Fentanyl is a drug, so US is has a very serious obesity epidemic. They have a very serious health epidemic, and they also have a very serious drug epidemic. Now, one of those drugs is called fentanyl. So China has been supplying fentanyl to US through routes of Mexico, and that fentanyl is like killing thousands of people every year. Many tons of thousands of people every year. And the people who it's not killing, fentanyl, they are basically getting decapacitated, right? So what US is dealing with is a two front war. One is fentanyl, and you seeing its youth perish, because this is what happened with the opium flush of China as well. So Britishers, what they did is they flushed China with opium, and when the youth is drugged, you can't expect it to do anything. So China is doing something similar to United States right now. One is through fentanyl, which is an actual drug, and one is through the digital drug, which is TikTok. And US has long complained that TikTok is a problem, security wise, and also the whole mental programming wise. Because there's also an allegation that TikTok in China is very different from TikTok in US. So in TikTok in China displays videos about science and technology and business and so on and so forth, all productive stuff. But in US it just shows absolute filth and garbage and intellectual depravity and so on and so forth. So Team Trump's agenda has been to get TikTok's US business acquired by an American company. So they believe that if they are being able to do that, it's gonna be fine. They could let TikTok run. They wouldn't want to ban TikTok, and that's why they had like a 90-day deadline period for TikTok, and then they extended it, and then they extended it, and so on and so forth. So they want TikTok to get acquired. However, China doesn't want TikTok to sell. China wants to keep TikTok, and TikTok is like a matter of geopolitical importance right now. Mr. Chirag Patil says, is the entire US debt in US dollar? Good morning, Archit. Good morning. Have a beautiful day. Mr. Patil says, is the entire US debt is in US dollar terms? Doesn't it mean that they are comfortable situation to manage, as in they can risk the inflation to avoid debt default? At least in the short term, they will be safe, though the long term value of US dollar will erode definitely. So, are you saying that, if since they can print dollars, they can actually refinance the debt through just printing dollars? No, that you're right, but inflation is a problem. When you print too many dollars, the value of dollars decline, and if the value of dollars decline, the interests on on that debt becomes more expensive to service, right? So you cannot print dollars too much, is the problem. And also, let's say you have a debt, and that is in dollar terms, correct? But there is a ceiling to how many dollars you can print, right? Printing dollars is not the solutions. I thought these debts are fixed interest rate basis. Okay, so that is complicated. A lot of debts are fixed interest rate basis, but the quantum of debt, if it increases, the interest amount becomes huge, right? So that interest amount, let's say if they have like $36 trillion in debt right now, and that increases by $3.5 trillion with this bill to the next 10 years, that's like $40 trillion. The interest amount of that $40 trillion will be huge, will keep increasing. And then you've got to keep rolling over the debt. And there comes a point when you can't roll over the debt anymore, and you have to default. And if you default, it's Armageddon essentially. That's what Ray Dalio keeps talking about. He's been talking about US going through a depression sometime soon. He says that US could enter a depression, not just recession but depression. But all those fears were allayed for now. He's been saying that for a long time. But in this book, The Great Debt Cycle, the New World Order, how countries differ, he categorically mentioned that he expects something to flip by the mid 2026 or mid 2025 26. So 2025 is already here, so we can wait for another year when these debts default, according to Mr. Ray Dalio. But that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. You know. Moving on. Moving on. Europe boils after first summer heat wave. So Europe is apparently boiling after this heat wave, and India, on the contrary, is seeing a early monsoon. So monsoons have hit India in an early way, leading to overall mildness of the summer, leading to good prospects for the agri sector, and for not just the agri sector, for the overall economy. But Europe isn't that great as far as this monsoon thing is considered. Recorded temperatures of 39 degrees centigrade. So for us, 39 degrees centigrade is not that lot, right? But Europe is, the standards are different. With the advent of early monsoon, and with the advent of a better monsoon and a better temperature scenario for the country, AC companies have suffered. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember the AC companies saw a big uh, decline in their forecasts. They said that we won't be able to sell ACs, and even the cooling units. So they felt the brunt of a good monsoon. So how monsoon affects businesses, right? Speaking of businesses, quick commerce are basically talking about range of levies to boost earnings. So everybody knows about the dark patterns where Zepto and Blinkit and so on, these people add costs as you order in a very non-transparent and weirdly, uh, what's the word for this, insidious way. They one transaction you don't even know that the price is getting up. They are becoming more transparent about it now because of all the regulatory scrutiny. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we talked about how the government was looking at the dark patterns, right? They were looking at inspecting how these dark patterns are uh, hurting customers. So they said that this needs to go. There was a minister talking about it and so on and so forth. So now they're apparently getting more transparent about it, and we'll see how that shapes up, right? How that but so they say that this will be better for unit economics. Of course, I have been talking about the need for price parity for a level playing field with the Kirana stores, because with this deep discounting stuff, with these guys burning like 80 to $100 million a month, what's essentially happening is killing of Kirana stores, right? Because they can sell at a discount, they can lose money, short term, mid term, long term. Like Flipkart is still losing money after 15 years of working. Amazon is still losing money after like 13 years of being around. So uh, it's not 15 years actually. Flipkart has been for 18 years. So Flipkart has been losing money for 18 years straight. Amazon has been losing money for 15 years. So these people can keep losing money, but that basically hurts the small businesses who run fair and square, right? And e-commerce still had a distance from the kirana stores as far as the offering range of offering was considered. That e-commerce, you got things which you couldn't have gotten from the nearby store unless it's a very big store, right? The small stores were safe. But with the advent of quick commerce, what you're seeing is small stores getting wiped away. So just uh, where I live, it's in Dwarka, and the markets right outside my colony, near my colony, essentially are getting wiped away. So you are seeing shops close down, the entire buildings getting demolished, and quick commerce dark stores taking their place. And that cannot be good news at all. In any universe, that's not a good news, right? So they're talking about being fair and square. So a lot of, if you read between the lines and if you read behind the text, you're gonna see that a lot of it is posturing under pressure. Government has said that do not do this. So what can a person say? What can a business say in that regard? If a government has pressurized that you cannot use the dark patterns. Earlier they used to be under the hood, but now they're going to be coming out openly to prevent further scrutiny, right? And they try to position themselves as a fair and square. But a lot of discounting still happens. Charges of 6 to 30 rupees per order are going up. The industry is obviously going to go up. So that's a reality, however it is. Moving on. If these companies are essentially forced to operate at a fair pricing level without burning money, there is absolutely no problem, right? There is absolutely no problem. If you are having a reasonable margin, or let's say if you're not running on negative margins, it's a very good thing that you have a new industry popping up and people can choose what they like. But you should not be doing this at the cost of honest businesses making a living by doing this artificial pricing, artificial discounting thing. That's the real thing. If you're honest about, if you're clear and transparent about your pricing, everybody can choose whatever they like, right? But right now the market is official. It's artificial, just as the cab market was artificial. when cabs were getting all discounted prices and getting, the drivers were getting incentivized, the customers were getting discounts. And what happened? Now people are going using bikes because when it came to pricing fairly, only bikes made sense, right? More of them. So moving on, the entire model has been disrupted, right? The disruption model has been disrupted. They're not talking about taking commissions on each trip now. Now they're trying to sell subscriptions to drivers. So that's like a new business model, and its unit economics are very different. So that kind of thing needs to happen here as well. Like, you need to force these people to operate with positive margins if you want to save the kirana stores. But that's not gonna happen. You know why? Because there's a huge interview of Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, and she has said that it's good that VC and PE exits are happening in this country, and it's good that VC and PE, uh, you know, transactions are pacing up. It's very good for the economy. And in the same interview, there was no mention of how the Kirana store closure thing is gonna be looked at. So essentially, that is a priority display that the 13 million Kirana stores, or 20 million, 15, 14 million Kirana stores, they'll manage, is the sentiment of the government right now, which may or may not be right, but we'll follow it. Moving on, ITC and BAT rekindle the frame for growth. So, ITC, the Indian Tobacco Company, which is a big conglomerate, it sells cigarettes, of course. ITC has a lot of brands. Which brands does ITC have? Uh, I don't know. I don't know. Godfrey Phillips had Marlboro. These people have Dunhill and so on and so forth. I'll have to check. ITC brands, ITC cigarette brands, cigarette brands. Classic, Gold Flake, Navy Cut. So these are ITC, and then they also have these stationery business, Classmate. Then they also have the hotels business. Then they also have the FMCG business, the Sunfeast, Yippee, and so on and so forth. Now they also ventured into the drinks business, right? The Naturals, uh, and so on and so forth. So ITC has a stakeholder. ITC has no promoter. It's a totally management driven company, and uh, they have a very big shareholding of British American Tobacco, BAT. Okay, they are like 24%. So BAT has been long looking at taking control over ITC, and that has been a bittersweet relationship between these two companies, right? ITC and BAT. So ITC's Mr. Chug, the president of ITC, actually resisted a takeover attempt of ITC by BAT. So I'll just tell you exactly how that happened. Uh, Around 2-3 decades back, BAT wanted to wrest ownership control of the ITC, but was resisted by the then chairman, KL Chug. KL Chug, successor, worked hard to ensure that the stake held by SUTI, Specified Undertaking of Unit Trust of India. So there's a trust, there's BAT as shareholders. There's no promoter holding. In ITC was not sold to BAT. So if BAT could have bought the SUTI's stake in ITC, ITC would have been a bad company. But they prevented that. So now they're looking at growth, as they're looking at some buybacks. The bad guys are selling some stakes and so on and so forth. And they're also exiting the ITC hotels business because that's not a core focus area. So let's see how that shapes up. Tobacco sales and financial advances surge, with now ITC now seeking shareholders nod to further expand business with UK-based group. So ITC is looking at send raw. So ITC sends a lot of raw tobacco to BAT. So they basically send a lot of raw tobacco to BAT, and they are getting a lot of advances for it. So that's gonna take up. Mr. Archit says, "What about Bihar economy?" So actually, as far as Madam Sita Raman is considered and Mr. Gadkari is considered, Bihar is actually getting a lot of investments. A lot of investments. So Bihar has got some major projects. Uh, I'm forgetting the projects names, but there was some 30,000 crore project which Bihar had gotten. And so Bihar is actually looking at some fillip as far as the investor sentiment is considered. Though uh, it's not really the magnet, right? The magnet remains Gujarat. The new magnet is UP of investment. UP is looking at $1 trillion GDP. So while India is looking at a $5 trillion GDP goal, UP is looking at a $1 trillion GDP goal. But Bihar has no such stated goals. Speaking of very interesting things as far as this paint industry is considered, you remember what I told you? It's gonna be hard for Asian Paints and Berger Paints, and these are the incumbents of the paint industry. And what happened in the paint industry is that we saw the entry of Birla, which really put a lot of pressure on the incumbents. And then also JSW Paints entered the paint business with uh, the acquisition of AkzoNobel, the Dulux brand, Dulux. So with that, the chief of Asian Paints has said that it's gonna be hard margin wise. So I told you, the stock of Asian Paints is down 20% year on year, 1 year to date, and it's not gonna be easy from here on. So you're looking at a similar telecom type crowded battle as far as the paints business is considered. Moving on, we are looking at it. There's a lot of political chit chatter. Kolkata is in news for another brutal rape case, unfortunately. And but we're not gonna talk about that because that's just a very sad thing to discuss, right? Bengal has really fallen, man. Bengal has really fallen off the cliff. It's perhaps Bengal and Punjab are the biggest disappointing stories of the last decade. How these two states have faltered, it's just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary how these two states. Punjab used to be one of the highest uh, uh, GDP per capita states 20 years ago in the 90s, 20, 30 years ago. And now it's at like 20th position or something. So Punjab's per capita income is like 20th, even though Chandigarh per capita income is amongst the top three, right? Goa, Chandigarh, these are the top three, Delhi, top three per capita income cities. But Punjab overall has really fallen off the cliff. And a lot of it has to do with the drug menace as well. So, the Chinese strategy of drugging American youth, something similar might just be happening in Punjab, we don't know. But the state has really fallen off the cliff, and so has Bengal. Moving on, Mahindra Group is looking to sharpen focus of growth gems, uh, says Mr. Anand Mahindra. He's talking about new challenges. So, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we talked about how the electric car play, the Chinese electric car foray, is a weird situation for Indian companies. So, Mahindra has identified and acknowledged the challenge, and it's looking at concrete businesses with potential to deliver 5x returns by FY30. So, in 5 years, they're looking at a 5x return. 5x return. 5x return must be like 20% year on year, 20, 30%, 25% year on year. That's how you're going to get 5x return, I'm assuming. So, the group is looking at capitalizing on the opportunity of diversification beyond China. The 1.59 trillion rupee. So I've never understood why these figures, rupee figures, are mentioned in trillions. What's the point? But anyway, very confusingly, if somebody could help me with the conversion of 1.5 trillion rupees in like 1,000 crores, I'll be very happy. Anyway, so what Mr. Mahindra and Mr. MD Anish Shah says, we are going deeper where we see right platform, scalable economics, and a clear path to leadership. Also, sharper capital allocation, and so on. So, EV platform development, battery localization, charging infrastructure with export markets. So that's nothing new. Context has become more urgent with China tightening controls over exports of key rare earth minerals. No surprise there. And what's not mentioned here is the Chinese foray or growth of EV and how it's gonna affect the car ecosystem of the country of India. Uh, Speaking of how things are gonna get affected, viewers of Thinkers Frequency, do you remember us talking about how the semaglutide drugs, the Wegovy, the Monjaro by Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, they had been, going full ballistic as far as their PR is considered, and they were saying that this is a great market, obesity is a big problem, 600 million people obese, and so on, 200 million people diabetes, and they also were looking at framing their product not as a weight loss drug but as a uh, what is it, the diabetes control drug. Now it's come out in UK. There's a news which says serious health effects, pancreatitis, and so on, have started showing up in people who took the drug like 2 years ago. So, if you remember, I told you that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because these people are claiming that there's not enough evidence that these drugs have problems doesn't mean that the evidence doesn't exist. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And I told you, quote unquote, somebody should make a clippings of uh, what I say as far as these things are concerned, because a lot of things just turn out to be very, very appropriate. So just listen to this. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And if you remember, I said that it's just a general heuristic is to be, it's good to be very distrustful of pharma companies in general. So whatever they are saying, it's good to have the first default as distrust as far as these people are considered. And that's proving to be the right strategy, because the drug, the semaglutide thing, is starting to show bad news as far as this whole thing is considered. So that is coming out to be true. You're gonna follow for more updates, right? So suddenly the PR has taken a rest for consequent 10 days. There used to be one news item or the other about this particular drug and how it's gonna kill or make such great moves in the industry. They're slowing down because bad news is starting to trickle in. So let's see how these people deal with the bad news now that it's out. Anyway, uh, Mr. Archit has a lot of questions. I'm interested in making an Indian IEM studio grade headphones because I can see the company like Boat, Noise, Mini. These brands don't give good sound quality. If I make an Indian brand, should I survive? Would I survive? I want to promote good quality audio products and give awareness about good sound profiles. The brand like Boat, Noise, Mivi, they want to make only profits. So that's very sweet of you to think, Mr. Archit. But the problem is that once you talk about quality sound profiles and headphones, like I'm a musician, I can tell you that that market is really well covered by folks like Sennheiser and Bose. And then there are studio grade people like Sennheiser is really, really tight in this market, right? So if you look at, it's gonna be a very tough sell. It's gonna be a very, very tough sell. Not gonna be easy at all because uh, everything gets made in China, right? So essentially, you will also be having to import it from China, and when you import it from China, it's gonna be a very difficult thing. Then it's gonna take a lot of marketing effort to pull in, and now folks like Marshall, who were essentially the amp companies, they're also coming up with making headphones. They're starting to make it. So it's a tough market, very tough market. I would fear taking it on head on. Dharavi project may include new business district. So, folks, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we discussed about how Adani, Group Adani, has got the mandate to rebuild the Dharavi slum redevelopment project, right? They are doing it. It's a 1 lakh crore project, 1 lakh crore, 95,000 crores or something. That's 12, $13 billion. And it's a 12, $13 billion which will reimagine how Dharavi looks in totality. So the slum is gonna be remade, and it's like a 2030 kind of a project. I don't know when it ends. I think it's 2030, 2035, because it's a very complicated project. So they have a lot of grand ideas as far as Dharavi is considered, right? They are imagining business centers, they're imagining community centers like parks and so on and so forth. Of course, the housing is proper. So Dharavi also has a very huge informal economy center. So a lot of people have businesses in the slums, right? So it's the job of the developer to find a way to incorporate those businesses in the business park area. And now what they're saying is that some of the business district will also get people from outside. So they're looking at really pushing pedal to the metal as far as the whole project is considered. The redevelopment of Dharavi, Asia's largest slum, is expected to include an exclusive commercial business district, adding a significant business and employment component to one of the most complex urban transformation efforts globally. It like no, it cannot be said enough how difficult it is to redevelop Dharavi. Dharavi is just a country in its own right. It's just a different place. It's a universe, if you talk about it. And making Dharavi again, reimagining it, is just extraordinary. So, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know we discussed about 80% of this project will be owned by Adani, and 20% will be the Mumbai Trust that owns it, right? So it's a huge project, and let's see how it shapes up. A lot of news around it, right? New scripts unfolds as media companies unbundle. So, for people who are not aware, Warner Brothers Discovery, they had merged 3 years ago. Okay, because this was supposed to be a realignment of the business, so they had merged. But now they had merged because of a lot of reasons, because you are able to sell ads more in a bundled way. Bundled packages could be sold to people and so on and so forth. So it was a very complicated merger of bundling of Warner Brothers and Discovery. But now they've chosen to unbundle. They are basically demerging essentially. So Warner Brothers Discovery decision to split into two separate entities just 3 years after its headline grabbing merger reflects broader dismantling of the old media conglomerate model, where everything from streaming to cable to studios was bundled under one roof. So, can you guess why Warner Brothers and Discovery are unbundling? Can you guess why this must be happening? Of course, some things are very simple to understand, like TV is not growing, streaming is growing, and TV is declining. As we know, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that in 2015, TV D2H, direct to home TV service, used to be having 150 million homes, right? And in 2030, they are looking at 78 million homes. Right now, they are at 100 million or something. So they have declined by 50 million homes in like 10 years. And they're going to decline to half in 15 years from 2007. 15 to 30, right? So that's the state of TV. TV is dead. TV is dead. The fact that you are watching this right now, 7 people on LinkedIn and 5 people on YouTube, this is huge, right? This is taking people away from TV. So TV is dead. So the problem with Warner Brothers Discovery merger was that it had the TV unit and the streaming unit together. Now, when you have the TV unit and streaming unit together, you're not being able to raise money. Why? Because TV unit has a lot of debt, and the valuation cannot get unlocked, right? Because you have, let's say you have a business, 30% of it is TV, 60% of it is uh, streaming, or vice versa. But would you be able to raise money for it? Nobody would put equity money for it, right? Because the business overall has so much of debt that nobody would touch it with equity. That's why future retail, yesterday we discussed, right, that couldn't raise equity money because they already had a lot of debt. So a way for a way that companies can find new ways to raise money is by just setting it aside, the keeping the debt unit, the sickly unit aside, demerging, and keeping the fresh streaming unit as a separate entity, and then raise money for it. Because then the multiples improve, right? You have Netflix, the multiple, you have other people. So you can just reorient yourself as a streaming company and then raise money and just forget about the debt laden TV company. So this is what's happening. With streaming now the primary growth engine, companies are under pressure to separate their fast growing digital verticals for slower legacy businesses such as linear TV, cable news, broadcast, and so on. And the numbers. According to Nelson's The Gauge report, streaming overtook combined share of cable and broadcast in May, accounting for 45% of total TV usage in US. So 45% of TV unit usage is basically streaming. So even I, like this thinker's frequency thing, we have an average watch time of 11, 12, 15 minutes. You know, just imagine. Like average watch time of 15 minutes is what we have every day. Every day. So on at peak we have like 10 people on YouTube and 10 people on LinkedIn, right? And the average watch time comes out to be like 12 minutes. Sometimes it's 19 minutes, 18 minutes. There are good days, there are bad days, but that's what's happening. So what Mr. Tushar Tiwari says, I recently switched to you from the finance news channel. So sweet of you. So sweet. I hope I provide that kind of value. And this is a fun exercise, right? So I'm not even trying to sell anything, which makes it even better. So I was talking about WBD's Warner Brothers Discovery restructuring will create two standalone companies. One focused on streaming and studio operations, including HBO Max, HBO, Warner Brothers Pictures, and DC Studios, and another housing traditional networks like CNN, Discovery, and Cartoon Network. So these three channels, these three networks go separate, and the streaming and studio operations, the film operations, they go left, right? The CEO CEO David Zaslav will lead the streaming first unit, while the bulk of WBD's $37 billion debt will sit with the legacy cable business. So they've essentially let the cable business die. You know, they're just making it die. They've set aside the debt unit and looking at the streaming unit, all the debt has been parked there. Why? Because they want to raise money. So I can bet that in a few days, maybe it's weeks, maybe it's months, you're gonna hear that Warner Brothers streaming unit has raised money. Okay, so to support the alignment, WBD has secured $17.5 billion bridge loans to buy 14.6 billion in debt. So they already had a debt 14.6. They've rolled it over. They're buying it with a $17 billion bridge loan. So that's what's talking about it. Morgan Stanley called the WBD move long overdue. It valued the streaming studios at over 40 billion. So the streaming play, the studio business is valued at 40 billion by Morgan Stanley using a 12x EV EBITDA multiple, while the GLN was assigned a 5x multiple and projected to carry negative equity due to its debt burden. So that's that. That's what's happening. So they're basically looking at just letting their TV business go to hell, or at least not focusing on the good side. Moving on, DOT says no more to delicensing of 6 gigahertz. may raise output power for outdoor Wi-Fi. So tech companies, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember we discussed this. This is slightly complicated, so we might have forgotten. But the tech companies were long talking about delicensing of the entire 6 gigahertz play because of public Wi-Fi and free Wi-Fi and so on and so forth. So these people wanted to provide. However, that would have interfered with the telecom operators and what they provide as far as this service is considered. So some of it has already been delicensed, but the DOT says that we're not going to do it anymore because we've given enough. So the government says that you know we're not gonna delicense more of the 6G because and it's not gonna open additional portions also for unlicensed or free public use because it's already there. So you know, tech companies are sad about it, but telcos are happy because they'll be able to sell. So the government says that the lower half of the 6G band is already enough for current Wi-Fi needs, and the next is gonna happen. So that's that. Moving on. Geo to be the biggest free wireless access. Sorry, fiber. What is FWA? It's fixed wireless access. Sorry, fixed wireless access. Geo is gonna be the biggest player in the world. So what's fixed wireless access, you ask? Fixed wireless access is that the dongle which gets fixed, it takes the SIM card. So instead of the cable outlay, it takes money from the tower. Oh, sorry, the signal from the tower and gives you Wi-Fi. That is fixed Wi-Fi wireless access. And Jio is apparently the world's biggest provider. It's gonna be the world's biggest provider of fixed wireless access. It's gonna leave behind T-Mobile, which is in US. It overtook US-based telco T-Mobile in number of fixed wireless access subscriptions. So industry fixed wireless access stood at 7.4 million, out of which 5.9 million are with Jio and some 1.5 million are with Airtel. And 0.18, that's with. So fixed wireless access, Jio is killing it. And it's also a very good business model because laying the pipes is very expensive, right? It's not easy doing that. Fixed wireless access has emerged as the only tangible monetizable opportunity of 5G, with both Jio and Airtel ramping up coverage, especially in areas where laying fiber for last mile is more cumbersome and expensive. So they've been able to make money on this. Good for the telecom companies, which are almost always crying. We discussed this, right? We discussed this. So speaking of things we discussed, we also discussed on Saturday and Sunday that the whole bit is gonna be good for stocks, right? We talked about it. You remember? We talked about how this Iran conflict and ending and so on and so forth is gonna be very good for the stock. Apparently, technical views have come in. It's Monday. We're gonna see at 9:15. It's just 15 minutes away. Nifty looks ready to scale new highs on bullish mood. So they might just be looking at 26,000, 26,200, which is okay. Which is okay, right? We talked about this. Who told you? I told you. Anyway, RBI rate cut to support growth. When credit offtake rises, so will deposits. So people, again, speaking of things we discussed, we talked about the bank's net interest margin is going to hurt, right? Because RBI has reduced the interest rates for lending, which is going to bring down the deposit rates. But deposit rates cannot go so down quickly because then people would not put money into FDs, and that's going to lead to some liquidity issues. So deposit rates will be a little high, but interest rates will come down right away, which leads to the net interest margin decrease for banks. And now Axis Bank CEO has essentially confirmed that it's going to be tough for the next few quarters, maybe 12 months, but then we're going to figure out. So it's going to be fine. So I told you the next few quarters we'll be looking at some net interest margin decrease of banks, and that's basically confirmed. So moving on, Indians have sent $135 billion in FY25. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that India gets a lot of remittance money from people abroad. That's the only silver lining as far as India is considered, and Indians leaving India is considered. So a lot of Indians want to leave India, as you always keep hearing that people are just trying to find ways to exit the country, especially the rich and educated people, whoever can basically, they find a way to go. Uh, and there's no good news there. No good news there except the remittance money, right? So a lot of people, especially in US, UAE, and the Gulf, these people send a lot of money home. So people in US, people in Gulf, they send a lot of money to their families. That's called inward remittance. That has reached $135 billion. That's huge. So that's the only good news. But people don't read between the lines or read beyond the lines. But the thing is that India also spends like $80 billion for going out and traveling and spending money outside. So at net level now you'd be looking at making 40-50 billion dollars. Is 40-50 billion dollars worth spending the rich of your country abroad? I don't know. I don't know. But what would they have done here? That's also a very good question. Did you expect them to do something great in India? Unlikely. There's a lot of competition, right? In India, an average person making like 6 lakh rupees, let's say, right? He goes to US and he suddenly starts making at least $60,000. That's 50 lakh rupees. And even with PPP and everything, he's being able to save 6 lakh rupees, bare minimum. So what he was making in India in total, being able to save like 1 lakh rupees or something, or 2 lakhs max, he'd be able to save like 6 to 7 lakhs living in US while also sending money to India. So that's why a lot of people go. But that's a very bad news for the country overall, as I've always talked about, right? Anyway, numbers are 47%, half of the country's merchandise was covered, trade deficit merchandise, 287 billion, was covered by inward remittances. Speaking of where this comes from, yeah, as per RBI, US, UK, and Singapore leads to 45% share. So US, UK, Singapore, 45%, and then 30% from Gulf, 40% from Gulf essentially, and then 15% from the rest of the world. So Canada, by the way, doesn't send any money. So people in Canada who go, they take their family with it, and then they just don't spend any money. This figure was $61 billion in FY17, and now it's 135 billion. So you can expect FY17 to FY25, that is 8 years. 8 years, it has from 61 billion to 135 billion. That's more than double. So you're looking at 8% growth year on year. Oh no, 10% growth year on year. 10% growth year on year. My god. My god. Yeah. Moving on. Monsoon hits Delhi, covers entire nation 9 days early. Good news. But let's see how the city, takes this particular rain. Because whenever it rains, Delhi becomes an actual shithole, right? With everything, with the sewage, pipes, and so on and so forth. So Miss Rekha Agrawal, the CM of Rekha Gupta, is she? Rekha Gupta, the CM of Delhi, said that the uh, sewage, arterial nodes of the sewage of Delhi, arterial drains, they were blocked during the last 10 years because they hadn't gotten money. So in the last 10 years, Delhi's government was looking at more non-revenue expenses like paying salaries, paying the subsidies, and so on and so forth. That had gone like 60% of the budget, when ideally the state is supposed to spend some money on capex and some money on these expenditures, like, but Delhi was not spending on capex or infra improvement at all in the last 10 years according to the numbers. So now they say that they're gonna put pedal to the metal there. They're gonna do a lot of drain cleaning and so on. Let's see what happens in this rain, right? this will be the moment of truth will arrive, at least for Delhi. But would it be fair to judge the new government because it's only been like a few months that this particular thing is coming on? I think it's fair, right? If you've been talking about so much, it's fair that you show what you can do. I think it's fair. You can talk about what you think about it. Uh, India US push for trade pact, deadline nears, that's okay. India shows progress on SDG, challenge remains. Sustainability development goals is what we talked about. The poverty rate decreasing, the inequality index decreasing, and so on and so forth. India has been making a lot of progress as far as finances are considered. So the proportion of people living in poverty declined to 14.9%, 15% from 25.8%, 26% in 2015 to 16. So 20, 2019-21, 14.9%, 2015-16, 25%. A lot of people now coming out of poverty, and now the numbers of 25, 26 will be interesting to watch. You know, social protection coverage up. There's something called Gini coefficient of household expenditure. Gini coefficient of household expenditure, which measures the degree of inequality among all sections, decreased to 0.23 from 0.28. So all of these numbers are looking good, and but challenges remain. Of course, there's no news item there. Railways are looking at overhauling the ticket system. Uh, this should affect how IRCTC looks as a stock, but move will be introduced in a phased manner to handle 150 million tickets at any given point. So the number is very interesting. The number says that per minute ticket enquiry capacity will jump 10 times to 4 million. So right now they can process like 4 lakh tickets per minute. It's gonna go up to 4 million. Adding it will allow over 1.5 lakh tickets bookings per minute. So per minute ticket enquiry to go up by 4 million, and per minute ticket booking to go up by 1.5 lakhs. So let's see how that shapes up. It's a good news, definitely. Israeli-Gaza conflict still on. Russia launches biggest aerial attack since the start of war, says Ukraine. Moving on. These platforms are looking at raising their minimum order value, which is no surprise. Okay. Mid-markets GCC are global captive units. They capacity capability centers. Basically, they are units of MNCs set up in India instead of just using outsourcing. So they are set to add 40,000 people by 2026. This is good news for people who will get hired, but bad news for IT, because now these people will be directly having their own capability centers, and these people will be hiring less people in total, which will be bad for IT hiring numbers, which we discussed. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember that we discussed about how IT would not be able to hire people anymore like the way it used to. Mr. Deepak Gautam says on LinkedIn, but the numbers are deceiving, Nishant. If you look closely, they restructured the poverty numbers, the threshold, as far as I know. Oh yes, please correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm mistaken. Yes, you are mistaken, Mr. Deepak Gurram, because we discussed this in very great depth. So earlier, the poverty estimate, the abject poverty limit was $3. Sorry, $2.18. Okay. So $2.18 was the below poverty line per day. Okay. Now United Nations, or the global unit which does that, it increased it to $3. So they made it higher, the threshold higher. According to that new threshold, the number of below poverty line people in India should have risen, let's say, or risen, should have basically increased, right? But that didn't happen. Now there was another angle to it on how this particular consumption was measured. So what they used to be doing was, when they used to have these surveys, they used to talk about there are two ways to do it. Okay, we discussed this in depth. One way was to have an average view of things that people buy. Okay, now that missed the long term purchases and the regular purchase, that sort of mixed it up. Now they basically brought it in a phased way, which basically made it more accurate. And yes, it led to more number of people appearing to be out of poverty. However, even that was factored in. So just when that data shifted, there was some increase. However, even if you account for that increase, you're going to see that more number of poverty, a lot of people have come out of poverty. So I've written something about it. Let me just find out the exact numbers from you. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know how we discuss this in very, very great depth, right? So just 1 second. 1 second. I'll fix it for you. This is very important. And so we should talk about it, right? Poverty. I had written about it, but I'm just missing the, yeah, got it. So there used to be something called MMRP, and there are two ways to measure it. One is uniform reference period, right? When you ask people what did they spend, you asked for a 30-day recall. What did you spend in the last 30 days? That was uniform reference period. And then what they changed it to was modified mixed recall period. They say that what did you buy in the last 7 days, and then what did you buy in the last 3 months, and then what did you buy just once every year, this last year. So this was to basically improve the measurement, because people tend to forget small purchases if you ask them for the whole month, So this basically, when you measure this consumption properly, fewer people come in the poverty line. So when India switched from URP to MMRP, uniform reference, to mixed modified reference recall period, fewer people came in the poverty line. But even then, the number of people which actually came by. So I'll tell you, in 2012, poverty dropped from 22.9 to 16% using older benchmarks. And then when it changed, I'll just tell you. Yeah, in 2011 and 2012, they used URP, okay? In URP, 22% were below poverty line, okay? Basically poverty people. But then they shifted to MMRP in 2011-2012, right? So then the number was 16%. So you're right that a lot of people essentially came out of poverty just because the data was shifted. However, that factor was just 1 year. After MMRP was declared as the way to go in 2011-2012, now the number is 5% in object poverty. So you get it? So even if you fudged with the data and you changed the data how it's measured, which is the thing to do, you should have measured it by MRP. MMRP is the right way to go. Even if you consider like, oh no, they just changed the data. Yes, they changed the data in 2011-2012. They came from 22% to 16%. That means there was a differential of 6%. But even with that, you've come down to 5%. So even if you measure with uniform recall period now, you're going to have a better result. So these numbers are not deceiving, is what my point is. I hope I've made it clear, right? If you like the explanation, you could just drop a comment or something. But yeah, Cure Foods, by the way, is going IPO. It's looking at raising 800 crores via fresh issue. Cure Foods is, so a bit of history. Cult Fit was the original company, which Ankit Nagori, ex-Flipkart, and Mr. Mukesh Bansal, ex-Myntra. These people came together, they founded Cult Fit. Now Cult Fit had a food unit called Eat Fit. After pandemic, Eat Fit, they wanted to close Eat Fit, and Mr. Ankit Nagori didn't want that. So he spun off Eat Fit, made Cure Foods. And Cultfit went its separate ways. So Cultfit got some stake in Eatfit. Eatfit got Cure Foods. Cure Foods got some stake in Cultfit, and they both went their separate ways. Cure Foods was into healthy foods, but that business didn't work. Then Cure Foods became like Thrasio for food. So they started acquiring brands and creating brands and selling them on Zomato and Swiggy and so on. Now Cure Foods is looking at an IPO. They've raised a lot of money, like crazy amount of money, 70 odd million dollars. And I'm not sure if they really make money, to be honest. I don't think they make money, even now. And I don't think they will be able to make money also, by the way. I think the prospects for them making money are low, very low. But they are looking at going IPO way. Thanks for the detailed information, Nishant. No problem, no problem. That's what we are here for, you know. Moving on. Anti-spam consent proposal May 8 data laws. Sure, no problem. OpenAI is turning to Google chips to power tech. So OpenAI is going through a very interesting period. OpenAI had a deal with Microsoft, where in that deal, it was written that as soon as OpenAI reaches AGI, artificial general intelligence, that deal will be off. OpenAI will be independent. So that particular thing was signed into the contract. Just imagine the people who signed that contract. Now when it's coming that OpenAI might just be looking at reaching AGI sometime in the foreseeable future, Microsoft wants to cut that deal away, right? They want to renegotiate. However, OpenAI is looking at finding, let's say, diversifying its options. It's now using Google chips to power tech. And, it's not just a diversification move. It makes sense because Mr. Peter Thiel said that NVIDIA is a temporary monopoly. NVIDIA's chips right now have a huge margin. They have 90% of the share. Everything is great. But soon these companies will be coming to the NVIDIA's home turf, and then you'll see a different picture of NVIDIA, which is not as flattering. Turns out that he wasn't that wrong after, or he might turn out to be right. So he said that the stock might not be where it is and there's not much upside and temporary monopoly. Basically, he was bearish on NVIDIA, but still NVIDIA rose like 38% in this year, right? And it's closing on the $4 trillion valuation mark, $4 trillion market cap. It's the most valuable company of the world right now. Second is Microsoft. It could be a $4 trillion economy. Now, and so I said that it might just be that Mr. Peter Thiel was wrong for the first time in his life. But with this announcement, OpenAI turning to Google chips to power tech, it might be that it's just a matter of time when he proves himself to be right once again. Speaking of NVIDIA insiders have sold $1 billion in stock amid market surge. So clearly, NVIDIA's insiders see some sort of peak as far as their share value is considered. So you never know. Never know. So that's about it. That's our, Meta is looking at raising $29 billion from private capital firms to its AI bet. With that, we come to the end of the 36th episode of Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis. Right before we punch in, it's 9:19. We took a lot of time. We have to go. I have to go. I'll see you. I hope you have a beautiful day personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow. Same place, same time, hopefully. Bye-bye.